Last week, Tangem announced that they found a potential vulnerability in their code. Is this something that you need to worry about as a Tangem user? Well, let's find out. So I've watched a few articles on this so far, and it seems there's a lot of misconceptions in terms of what happened with Tangem here. Tangem identifies and resolves potential vulnerability. They're not calling it a bug, but essentially it was kind of a bug. They state that no private keys were compromised, no funds were lost, and no accounts were accessed. And this vulnerability only happened to a very small group of users, fewer than 0.1%. The issue here was that when you generated or you imported a seed phrase from another wallet, the private key was mistakenly logged in the mobile app's logs. And of course, these logs can be accessed by devs and support, whoever could see these internal logs. Now, you only have to worry if these two things happened within 7 days. Number one, you activated a wallet using a seed phrase or imported a seed phrase. And two, you contacted their support team through the app. When I did my first review on Tangem on their cards, I clicked on the email contact button, but I never sent an actual email. So I'm not sure if that means I'm vulnerable or not. I'm assuming that you have to actually click send for those logs to be confirmed in the system. Now, if you did neither of those or only one of those, you have nothing to worry about. For example, if you generated without a seed phrase through the chip itself, or you didn't contact support at all. If you press F12 on a Windows device, it will pop this up. On a Mac, you can look it up. I'm really not sure what it is. But then you have something here called console. The console is a tool for developers to use so that they can do a few things. One of these is to debug information. So maybe something's going wrong and they want to see how to fix it. Maybe they can spot something in the code that's not running right. So the devs need to see this to be able to diagnose what the best next option is to fix that. Another obvious use of the console is to find errors. And here we can see many errors. Not all errors are bad. As we can see, I'm still able to access this blog, but get a million different error messages. And I can click on these red ones. And if we click on these two arrows going to the right, we can see network performance, memory, application. All of these things are being tracked in your browser, whether you know it or not. So if we click on performance, we can see how well things within our console, within our browser are running. And this would be running in your mobile app as well. So these could be things like loading times, memory usage, and they're always gaining this information to help to update the app, maybe to speed it up. And just so you know, I am not a full-time developer, and I never have been, but I'm very aware of the console and the way that some of these things work behind the scenes. And lastly, our user interactions. So basically, everything you're clicking on and doing within the mobile app, they are also tracking that data. And now it's important for us to understand where these logs are stored, because can other people get access to this data? It would be huge. It would basically be the destruction of Tangem. And there are 3 places where this data can potentially be stored, according to my research. One is locally. So we're looking at this local console right here. Is nobody is accessing this technically. This console right here is my own console on my device. But then a company usually has a server or a backend, it's called, where they're storing this data somewhere else with something like AWS, which is Amazon. They have Firebase or other custom APIs where they are trusting those services with storing their data securely. Lastly, we have other third-party services such as Sentry, Loggly, and there's tons of others. Now, from what it seems, Tangem is, 1, it would be locally on your device, and 2, it would be in their own backend, their own database. Only they can access this data, such as your private keys, if you were one of the very unlucky people to have done these 2 steps. 1, create your seed phrase with them and then message support through the app within 7 days. And the only people in Tangem that could potentially have access to this data would, 1, be the developers, the people who are actually working on the client, the mobile app, to make sure it's running properly and checking those logs. Another potential one, which I don't think is the case, would be support staff, because in the case of different companies, the support staff will need to diagnose different things by looking at the log. Like I've done this in companies that I've worked for, where I would need to go into the log to kind of understand more of the error and self-diagnose. So I think it's very unlikely for this to happen, but it's possible. And even saying that, it would be very unlikely that every support staff or every developer would have access to the logs. Generally, it would be only someone with a password that is in a very controlled organized environment. There were no easy ways to exploit this system. You need a password and different kinds of ways to protect it. Like I said, I'm not a developer, but it would make sense if there were precautions in place to make sure that not everyone could get this. So on the Tangem side, the way this worked is that after they got their 2 audits, they added some kind of NFC logging mechanism that was accidentally logging people's private keys. Now, how exactly this happens, we're not really sure, but basically you create your seed phrase by putting your card or your ring onto the device. Once this is created and you message support, for some reason your private keys were being attached to the logs in that email, which we could see the example on the side here. I really hope that this makes sense. What's the worst bug or vulnerability you've seen in the crypto space? Let me know in the comments below, because it really helps the algorithm to get this message out to other people. Be sure to like and subscribe below. Another thing we need to hit on here is the huge difference between a private key and a seed phrase. There have been so many misconceptions on Twitter, on Reddit, and even on YouTube comments that we just need to clear the air here. Here's a nice little table to wrap your mind around it. So a private key, its purpose is to direct access to cryptocurrency funds on a specific blockchain, right? We're not talking about multiple blockchains for one private key, but we are talking about multiple blockchains for one seed phrase. For example, the seed phrase is a backup to generate all of your private keys and wallets across different blockchains in that one account. So for example, in Tangem, we have Solana, we have Bitcoin, we have Ethereum, we have Tron. All of those different blockchains have separate private keys, but they do not, I repeat, they do not have separate seed phrases. Think about it. When you create a MetaMask or a Phantom wallet, those hot wallets, or any kind of hardware wallet, how many seed phrases do you generate? Please tell me you said 1, because there is only one seed phrase for one account to incorporate all of your private keys. And you can easily see the difference between this when you see it in its form. As we know, usually it's a 12 or 24 word seed phrase. A private key is a string of characters, and it's usually 64 characters. And we could see a private key here on this website. It is just an extremely long form, right? A long string of text, but it's 64 characters long. And something we can also do is we can encrypt our private keys. But it's interesting to see that when Tangem sent them in the logs, they accidentally put them in the logs. They weren't encrypted. They were just out there naked in the open, streaking on the street. But to be fair to Tangem, they had no idea that this was happening. They just didn't have the things in place to make sure they were checking their code all the time. Mistakes happen. No money was lost, thankfully, yet. And in terms of security, your private key is compromised. If someone gets a hold of your private key, say that somebody at Tangem was like, well, shit, I got all these private keys, man, this is awesome. And they take your private key and they sign a transaction, because with a private key, you can sign a transaction to confirm that this is your wallet. Once you confirm it, you can withdraw, transfer the funds. Now, what we don't know as well, which I would like to know, is when we were logged, say I sent a message to support, did it take all of the private keys in our wallet? Or is it only the private keys of the ones that we had value of in our account? For example, if I sent Bitcoin to my Tangem wallet, it probably had that private key, right? But if I didn't have any Solana, was a private key generated yet or not? Now, if our seed phrase is compromised, we are completely fucked. For lack of better words, your money's gone. Like there is no going back from losing a seed phrase, unfortunately. It's literally a reason why I put some of my money on Celsius, is because I didn't trust myself holding my own keys, my own seed phrase, because, oh, what if I lose it? I'd rather someone else hold it and then I won't feel as responsible. But I wish I had listened to myself, because then I would have been able to, keep that money off a centralized exchange. Let's dive back into this article. So how did Tangem resolve the issue? Are they in our good books? Now, they fixed the bug, and this was in version 5.19.1 on Apple Store, and Google Play it was 5.19.2, one ahead, of course, because Google is better, obviously, than Apple. Thankfully, they were able to permanently delete all of the logs that they had collected, and there is no residual data remaining. That's what we wanted to hear. And they notified users within the app. I think they did a really good job to hit on this quickly. because as users, especially of a service that's well, not technically a service, but of a device that's helping us to store our wealth, our crypto, we want them to be very transparent and open as quickly as possible. So they did send me an email, or not an email, but they did send me a notification within the app. And I'll pop up some examples here because I thought they were really with it to do this. Some other hardware wallets I know have not been as quickly transparent, unfortunately. And they said that they've improved some of their security measures. So they implemented additional safeguards and protocols to prevent this from happening. So we just hope that they are more diligent to keep on top of the code and make sure that no exploits happen. So if you were one of the unlucky 0.1%, potentially me, you should do the following steps. So you have to update the Tangem app to the latest version, of course, transfer your funds out to a centralized exchange or a hot wallet somewhere else, or another hardware wallet. Better to send it to another hardware wallet. Reset the wallet to factory settings, which we just mentioned. Reactivate the wallet without a seed phrase or with a seed phrase, it's your choice, and then transfer your funds back to your newly activated Tangem wallet. And the biggest thing to come out of all of this with Tangem is the new bug bounty program. Now, they released a blog post about it on December 12th. They probably knew about this bug for at least a month. This was on January 1st. This one was on December 12th. So they did know, and they were trying to figure out the best way to handle this. That's my intuition, but I could be completely wrong, and it doesn't matter as long as the problem is fixed. So the bug bounty program will look like this. It's going to launch in 2025, so it's not currently, live yet. It has a reward structure, so you gain rewards by finding bugs and vulnerabilities within the code. This is a very, very common scheme in a lot of crypto projects, actually, because if white hat hackers are able to find these codes before, the malicious actors, that is a huge thing for these projects to save their reputation and also to save mainstream users money. They're focusing on vulnerabilities, API integrations, and other systems, and they want to make the process as easy as possible for people to send in these bug bounties. You can already send in as well to bugbounty@tangem.com. So if you're a developer, if you're, looking to potentially find some exploits, hopefully not. Hopefully this never has to be used, but hey, we live in a world where vulnerabilities are just part of life, and we just hope that they're not detrimental. So going forward, we can only hope that Tangem, if this ever happens again, that somehow these private keys are encrypted at all times. If they're stored somewhere, they should always be encrypted. Most people should not have access to the logs unless it's completely necessary. And it's common practice that after a certain amount of time, these logs are deleted, because if other people get their hands on it, it's just not worth holding on to it. Let's end here with my personal thoughts on the whole situation with Tangem. Is this an inexcusable offense? Now, I want to say, at least they weren't sending emails of our private keys out. Could be worse, right? But I think there should have been more things in place in order to make sure this didn't happen. And it seems like it was going on for a while, which is kind of worrying, but it was all consolidated and stored within their own database. It wasn't leaked anywhere. And it shows that at least within the company, they had all of this contained. It seemed to be at least airtight, in which no one lost any money, which is pretty crazy to see that with this exploit. They also handled the situation incredibly professionally. It seemed that they took as much time necessary to understand the code, to warn users, and to put the precautions in place to make sure it will never happen again. So will I continue to use Tangem? Of course I will. I don't think this is a crazy bug to the point where I wouldn't trust the technology that they currently have in their hardware wallets. Now, if something drastic happens in the near future where we have another bug or exploit or vulnerability in the code and it's as significant as this one, yeah, we might have to worry about it. But at the moment, it seems like they have things under wraps and they've done a good job to, hit the nail on the head here. And I want to end this video by saying, you need to diversify. You shouldn't just have one hardware wallet in the first place and trust that all your funds are safe there on just that one, right? We need to spread it amongst multiple hardware wallets. If you want to put a little bit in a hot wallet, a little bit on a centralized exchange, that's okay. But as long as you're willing to live with it, that's the important part. So you shouldn't gamble all your money on one device. That's silly, even if it's the most, secure and airtight system you've ever seen. Human error is also possible. So if you can, get your hands on multiple hardware wallets, spread out your crypto, and then you won't worry about some kind of bug like this happening in the future. Well, that's it for today's video. Catch you in the next one.